Hello and welcome to Lynchburg Live. I'm your host, Linda Smith, and tonight's program is the first part of a two-part series about volunteer surgical missions for children in third world countries. My guest tonight is Lynchburg orthopedic surgeon Dr. William Andrews. I've known Dr. Andrews and worked with him in the operating room since he came to Lynchburg approximately 20 years ago. In addition to Dr. Andrews' orthopedic practice, he volunteers his time and his surgery skills several times a year in third world countries with a program called Kids First. Dr. Andrews, I'm delighted to have you as my guest.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
And if you'll tell our audience what the Kids First program is about.
Sure. Kids First is a group that's been in existence for about 20 years, and we have surgeons, anesthesiologists, pre- and post-op nurses, so we have our own contained unit. And we do surgery on children in the third world. We're currently in Mexico and have been for about 5 years, but we've been all over South and Central America.
That's so neat. How do you go? I mean, do you take your vacation time to do this, or do you just set aside time every year to do this, or?
I take my vacation time. Some of the nurses have to take time without or unpaid leave, depending on their hospital contracts, but I take vacation time.
So your nurses are volunteers as well?
Correct.
And the anesthesiologist? You take a
Yes.
whole team?
We have an entire team, yes.
That's really interesting, and you have such dedication to doing this. How long have you been doing this?
I've been with Kids First since, I think, 1993, something like that.
I had a list of questions to ask, but I think everybody will be interested in knowing what kind of surgeries that you do on these children. And I know you've brought some pictures that you'd like to tell us about. So can you tell us, what do you run into as far as deformities and injuries in these third world countries?
Certainly. Really what we see is nothing different than what you see in this country. The difference is, in this country, the children are treated early. If they have a fracture, it's taken care of right away. If they have club feet, they're fixed early on in infancy. The places we go, there is no physician to take care of these children. So what you see is, rather than a club foot that'll point somewhat around toward the inside of the foot, their club feet will point all the way backwards, 180 degrees around. Cerebral palsy that we take care of, their deformities will be worse because they've been untreated. So we treat the same things that we would here: club feet, dislocated hips, fractures that don't heal well, some residue of infections, some neuromuscular things like spina bifida, cerebral palsy. We occasionally see polio. It's the same gamut of problems, but just they're more severe because they've not been treated.
Do you have things that different localities, you have deformities or surgical problems more because of the locality? You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I thought actually that we would see that. The honest answer is it's really about the same, other than something like polio that you rarely see in our country. It's the same kind of problem, and for instance, Colombia, where we went for many years, didn't have a different percentage of club feet than the U.S. So it's really very similar.
Do you want to show these pictures and let
Certainly.
you tell us about the pictures as we go?
Certainly. This is just a typical kid pre-op, and it's just that I brought that picture to you because he's such a cute kid. And one of the things about taking care of children is it makes you feel so good, but they're just so loving, and I thought he kind of embodied the whole concept there. This is one of our anesthesiologists. He's a cardiac anesthesiologist at Vanderbilt. And this picture I sent to you because what it shows is how trusting the kids are. That's probably the major difference I've seen in the third world. These children will come down the hall, jump in your arms, and you take them to the operating room. Our children are so conditioned to not liking doctors, and understandably so, that they would never come and run and hop in your arms. But she's about to go to sleep, and you can see she's in the OR. She's already got her IV started, and she's got a big smile on her face. This is one of the things that we've had a lot of success with in the third world, and it's called hypophosphatemic rickets. It's a nutritional disorder that you can treat But the problem is once you treat the nutritional disorder, you've got these horrible legs that they can't walk, they can't run. And we used a very simple technique that was used here for a different problem and kind of changed it a little bit, and we've used it in the third world. We've probably done about 20 of these kids, and they go from not being able to walk to being able to walk and play soccer. And one of our very first ones had never played sports, and it was in Colombia, and we brought him some soccer shoes, and then the next year he came back with his soccer shoes and his soccer pants on, sort of strutting his stuff with his straight legs.
That's wonderful.
And this is a little boy afterward. One of the things we see is there are always parents involved. It's very interesting to see and very heartening to see how tight a family unit, and we've seen that in every country we've been to. The other reason this is in here is that unlike in our country where we have volumes of medical records and volumes of what I would consider extra work, if you look at his cast, his whole op note and all his post-op instructions are written in Spanish on the cast, so it makes it very simple and it works very well. This is some children in the Dominican Republic, and it again is the same concept I showed you, the one child in the OR. These 3 different boys are going to 3 different rooms in a minute to get operated on, and they're sitting in the hall right outside the ORs, ready to go, smiling, and just no concerns on their face.
So they're aware that you're there to help them, and that they're
Yes.
going to be better after
Yes.
they come out of it, and that lessens their fear.
It does, and they're just very trusting because even though we don't even speak their language very well, they are willing to kind of make that leap of faith.
And working with the parents is an easy thing, a good thing.
It is. It's a very easy thing and very rewarding. This is an example of what I was talking about. That's a clubfoot, and in our country the clubfoot won't look that bad. When this child stands, her left foot, which is the one on the right-hand side of the screen, will point completely backward. The toes will point completely backward, and that's what would happen if it were untreated in this country. We just treat them much, much earlier, and so they don't get to that point. This is a fairly interesting case. One of my, there's a guy named Greg Mencio at Vanderbilt, and he and I are the co-leaders of Kids First. And Greg is a very accomplished surgeon. He's these are brachial plexus injuries where the child is born with the inability to raise their arm from birth. And Greg does a kind of combination operation. That's the post-operative cast. But that child, when we see him back 6 weeks, or not 6 weeks, we'll see him back about 12 weeks later, he can lift his arm. First time he's ever lifted his arm. It's pretty amazing. This is the town where we have been for the last 5 years. It's in central Mexico on a high mountain plateau. It's called San Miguel. It's a beautiful central town. It's an old colonial town. And the central part you see there with the old church called the Parroquia. And our original hospital in San Miguel was only about 3 blocks from that. We currently work at one a little higher on the hill, which is about a mile from there. This is an OR in Mexico, and we run 3 surgical teams, and in San Miguel we only had 2 rooms that we could use, so we broke this room in half, and you can see we have 2 operations going at the same time in this room. It works well because we know each other so well. It's not a problem. But the only thing that you'd think would be a little bit of a problem is when after the first case of the day, the cases are going to stagger in because one will be longer, one will be shorter. So as you can see, we're working on the child to the left-hand side of the picture, and the child to the right-hand side has not gone to sleep yet. And again, those children are so trusting that they come into that OR and it doesn't seem to bother them.